Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Drafted Pages podcast. The Florida Panthers are repeat cup champions. Free agency is underway. The draft has happened. So much to talk about today. Let's dive right into the playoffs, our key takeaways from this year's cup run by the Panthers, maybe some interesting storylines with Rantanen against his former team in Dallas in the first round, and Carolina continuing to fail in the conference finals. But then again, who's really been stopping the Panthers these past 2 years? So,
Well, actually, three.
yeah, 3 years. Great point there. Yeah. So, let's dive right into it. Dad, you made a great point right there. 3 straight trips to the Stanley Cup final for the Panthers. They've won the last 2 after falling to Vegas, maybe learning some lessons along the way that year. What are your kind of overall takeaways from this year's playoffs, in particular with the Panthers hoisting the cup once again?
I think the Panthers. Two things that I'll say. The Panthers are built to win the cup. They have everything they need. They have offense. They have defense. They have goaltending, and they have grit. Kachuk brought them the grit that they lacked. He gives them a toughness, an edge that you have to have in the playoffs. So I think they are really built well for the playoffs, and I think that they are very well coached. That they play when they play their game, which is in the playoffs, a little different than the regular season. Okay, but they play a lockdown defensive style where they force you into very bad shooting lanes. They don't, people like McDavid and Draisaitl are going to get those good shooting opportunities because they're just that good. The McKinnons of the NHL, they're going to get those. But by and large, the Panthers play a game where we're going to make your superstars, we're going to force them out as much as we can to the edges, and your third and fourth lines are going to have to step up and beat us. We are not going to let your superstars beat us. That's the game they play, and they play it really well. And when they do it well, they win. They did it last year. They won 4 close, hot, really tight checking games against Edmonton and got blown out in the 3 shootout games. Okay, lost all 3. This year, after splitting, they said enough of this nonsense, and they went into their lockdown game and they won. That's the way I look at it.
Matt, you're rocking their jersey. I'm sure you got a lot to say on this topic as well.
Yeah, so my initial thought was surprise. I had the Panthers losing in the first round to the Lightning. Couple factors in that were just that the Lightning were going in really hot, and you make the cup 2 years in a row and you're tired. That's a hell of a lot of hockey to play in a 2-year span, now 3-year span. When they made short work of the Panthers or of the Lightning, when the Panthers made short work of the Lightning, I very quickly was like, this is a team that could do it again. And I agree with you, Dad. I think that they have all the pieces, they have the coaching, and they play so well defensively in the playoffs. I mean, you look at the Lightning, Kucherov, non-factor, absolute non-factor. Second round against the Leafs, and that's a whole separate story that I'm sure I'll get my chance to harp on here. No reason to break with tradition, but for now we'll stick with the Panthers. Matthews, non-factor. Marner, non-factor. Tavares, non-factor. Nylander showed up. The finals, the Eastern Finals against Carolina, Aho, non-factor. Svechnikov, non-factor. Jarvis, non-factor. And then the finals, McDavid, 1 goal. Who was their leading goal scorer in the finals? Was it Corey Perry was the Oilers' leading goal scorer in the finals, something like that? Mm-hmm. Which nothing to take away from him. I love him. He's a great player. I've been a big fan for his whole career. But, on a team with McDavid and Draisaitl, you're not exactly worried about Corey Perry scoring, right? If that's what they're coming at you with, you got to feel pretty good. And Paul Maurice just had them ready to play. They played so well. They shut teams down, and the offense was healthier and better. You said, Dad, last year they won 3 close games and then lost the shootouts. And this year they lost 2 one-goal games in overtime, 2 fantastic goals by Draisaitl, who you said, he's going to get his. And other than that, they absolutely torched Edmonton. It was not even close. So, I mean, Florida won this one going away. They were absolutely the best team in it, deserved it. And just a heck of a second win. There was no luck. There was no fluke involved. There were no goofy bounces or one-offs or what-ifs. This was an emphatic cup win for the Panthers.
Yeah, I think the Panthers proved once again what it takes to win in the playoffs, having depth up and down your lineup, being able to roll 4 lines, having a top shutdown pair defensively to neutralize whatever team's top line there is. And they play within a system, and that system works. And they get buy-in top down from their superstars to their fourth liners that are playing 9 minutes a night, 7 minutes a night. And it's a proven factor to success. And the NHL is a copycat league. Wouldn't it surprise me if other teams around the league start to try and emulate what Florida has done? I think Carolina has taken a stab at that, at least from a GM perspective, of establishing a good core of players, not just a core 4 like we saw with the Leafs and now with Edmonton. They're establishing a core 8, core 9 guys up and down your lineup on both ends of it to solidify stability and buy into the system. And if it works, it works, and people want to keep playing there and want to keep winning, and they've basically brought everybody back that mattered. So they're going to be a force to be reckoned with once again next year and in a couple of years to come. We'll see how Father Time handles certain players on that team, but their window is still prime to get another win here within the next 2 years to really be a dynasty.
I'll just add to that, Nick, that I think Florida learned from their cross-state rivals, Tampa, who went to 3 straight finals and utilized that third and fourth line scoring immensely in the playoffs. They did not rely on Stamkos, Kucherov, Hedman for every goal. They had guys up and down the lineup who were scoring. And you need that in the playoffs. Edmonton's seen it the last 2 years. You shut down McDavid and Draisaitl, and Florida just does not care about who else you put out there. Their attitude is, we're going to stop those guys. We know they're going to score. They'll score when they can. But the rest of your third and fourth line, we ain't afraid of them. Go ahead, try and beat our goalie, because we don't think you can do it. And that's the attitude they take. And I think you need, in the grind, especially to repeat, you need depth. You can't just rely on 2 lines.
Well, and not just the scoring. Obviously, Florida's third line was every bit as good as that Tampa third line. Tampa had Gord, Goodrow, and Coleman on that first run. Right. In Florida, Lundell, Losterinen, and Marchand. I mean, Brad Marchand on the third line, you're doing something right. But, I mean, how important was – we talked about it. Florida just hit everything that moved and was wearing blue and orange. They were just slamming them all over the ice. And how important is a guy like Jonah Gadjevich, and how much did he get in Edmonton's head? I think it was game 3 that just got completely out of hand, but Florida won that one going away in every aspect. I mean, he's laughing at him and sticking out his tongue on the way to the penalty box when he's getting tossed out of the game and he's dancing around like a monkey and calling Edmonton a bunch of monkeys. I just like, how important is it to have a guy like that who just gets in their heads and they just can't, they don't have an answer for him. They don't have the, whatever that is, that X factor that guys like that bring. So not just the depth scoring, but those intangible pieces that those guys bring of just like, this is going to agitate the hell out of you and throw you off your game.
Right. And to your point, it was perfectly clean, perfectly legit. I can't remember who threw the check, but completely leveled McDavid. Completely leveled him in game 3. Okay.
Knocked him right.
There's nothing illegal about it. Right. Okay. If in the old Oilers, if somebody had done that to Gretzky, McSorley, somebody's coming on the ice the next shift, and they're just dropping the gloves. They don't care. Whoever threw that check is getting tuned up, and they're sending a message right back that you don't do that. Okay, and Edmonton just doesn't have that, or didn't do it. And as a Flyers fan, I said for years that they let Lindros get the crap beat out of him and never defended the guy because, well, he's big, he can take care of himself attitude. I'm sorry. Your superstar gets hit like that, you don't allow that to happen. Because once you allow it to happen, as you said, if you're not going to do anything about it, we're just going to keep hitting you. You're done. You're wearing the other colors, you're getting hit.
Yeah, something I find interesting looking back on these playoffs in the past few years is the pattern of winning the President's Trophy and going on to win the Stanley Cup the following year or years after. And the same thing with going to the Stanley Cup final, losing, and then going back to win a few years later. We've seen it time and time again. It's been a repeat pattern. We talked about it last year. Would Edmonton learn? Would they be able to do something different if they got back? They got back, and to be honest, they looked worse this year, or at least Florida looked better than they did last year. And whether you want to talk that, give credit to Florida and their management and their system, you want to come down on Edmonton not willing to change, not having the ability cap space wise because of other contracts that they've given, or just the inability to part ways with certain assets, whatever it might be. I think there is a secret to that in the learning experience, and wanted to get your guys' thoughts on, as Matt just dropped, we'll give him a minute to come back here. Dad, you can kick us off. What does Edmonton do from here? I mean, we've talked at length. It's going to be a topic of conversation the whole year of what McDavid is going to end up doing if he'll sign an extension. What do you do if you're management in Edmonton?
Well, we talked about this last year, and I hate to beat a dead horse, but Edmonton just does not have a goalie you can count on to win you a cup. Skinner's a good enough guy for the regular season. He's shown that. You're going to make the playoffs, okay? But in the playoffs, you need that guy that can make that save when you need it made. Now, every goalie gives up a bad goal. Bob gave up a goal. I forget what game it was. I watched it and I was like, how the heck did he let that go? I mean, it's just a save he should make in his sleep, right? And it happens. But Edmonton has got to do something. I don't know where they go. I really don't. McDavid is going to be a free agent at the end of next year, and he's already told them he's in no hurry to sign a contract. That to me is a warning shot across the bow. That McDavid is basically saying, "I'm going to take a wait and see. Are you guys going to do something to make this team better? Are you going to get us the grit we need? Are you going to get us the goalie we need? Because if you don't, I may not be all that gung-ho on re-signing here." And I think that the rest of the league is chomping at the bit on that warning shot that McDavid fired. I think they're all loading up to at least make McDavid an offer. I mean, how can you not? Okay, how can you not? If you know McDavid is playing for free agency, you've got to be willing to at least make him an offer. Okay, he may turn you down, but I'd want, if I was a GM, if I'm Danny Briere, I want to go to my fan base and say, look, we made him an offer. We offered him $15 million a year. That was where we could land. Okay, he said no. Or he took an offer for $16 million a year. What do you want us to do? We maxed out our off. If I'm a GM, I want to be able to tell my fan base that. Now, the other side of that coin is if you're Edmonton and you're coming up to the trade deadline next year and you haven't signed McDavid and he's shown no interest in really talking to you, are you going to let him walk, or are you going to trade him and try and get what you can? Now, again, if he hasn't signed, and the league knows he's not going to sign, you're going to get a bag of mixed nuts for him, because otherwise unless they can work a sign and trade deal, who's going to give up a whole lot when we can just get him for a free agent, right? I mean, nobody's going to mortgage the farm to get him if he's just going to walk. So I think Edmonton's in a really, really tough bind here. I think, we said it the other day. They signed 4 nobodies basically. That they're not big contracts; they're 1 and 2 year contracts. But and Bouchard, way, you said it, Nick, way overpaid for him. Okay, knowing you're going to need probably every available cap spot you have to re-sign McDavid. Why are you signing a bunch of nobodies who aren't really making your team any better? There's nobody they signed that I look at and says, if I'm Florida, if I'm Dallas, if I'm Colorado, I ain't sweating bullets about any of those guys they signed. There ain't nobody that they signed that scares me and makes me worry. So I just don't know why Edmonton is. I can't figure it out. I really don't know what they're doing, to be honest. Matt, your thoughts?
Yeah, so, I mean, Edmonton is in I agree with you. There's sort of a perfect storm brewing in Edmonton, in that you lost the cup 2 years in a row. You really got pummeled this year. To me, they made their biggest mistake getting outbid on clearly the best goalie that was going to be available, which is John Gibson, right? And the Red Wings outbid them on John Gibson. Now, I don't love John Gibson. He got supplanted by Lucas Dostal in Anaheim. He's clearly not a true number 1 superstar goalie anymore. But to me, their moves, and I agree. I initially thought the signing of Bouchard was $10.5 million total, and I thought, wow, what a steal. And then when I realized it was $10.5 million a year, I was like, I can't make heads or tails of this. It appears to me like they are spending to keep their other pieces. It appears to me like they are doubling down on Stuart Skinner. And I don't know, maybe he's discovered the hidden village of goaltending monks in the Tibetan mountains, and that's where he's training in the off season. But to me, you're doubling down on a guy who hasn't won. You missed out on the best goalie last year. You can't even really say you're waiting for next year because, I mean, who's going to be a free agent next year? Bobrovsky? Okay. He's going to be 30, 35, 36. Markstrom?
No, I think it'll be
right?
38.
38? 38? Okay, 38. Markstrom, Frederick Anderson, right? It's not like next year's market of goalies is a whole lot better. Great goalies don't hit the market anymore. It's rare that even good goalies hit the market. So to get outbid on the only really legitimate good goalie when you've clearly lost because of your goaltending makes no sense to me. I think the McDavid situation is more than a warning shot across the bow. I think that unless Stuart Skinner looks like a Vezina contender and they really think they're going to win the cup next year, I think the conversation's already been had behind closed doors. I think McDavid's out. I don't think there's any way he stays. I don't know that Edmonton's going to be able to pay for him at this point, or that he'd want to stay. The guy's the best player of his generation. He wants to win a cup, and if he's not going to do it in Edmonton, he's going to go somewhere else. I do think he gets moved at the deadline. I hear what you're saying, but I think Edmonton is either going to, if they wait till the deadline, they're going to have to take peanuts for him. But some team out there will jump the gun to get McDavid before free agency, right? I don't think they'll get a full offer for him, but if I think I can pull off a trade for him, why not? Even if I have to give up a couple first rounds at the deadline, maybe I do have to mortgage the farm. Is McDavid not worth 3 first-round picks? Sure. All right.
Right.
As a Red Wings fan, I love Dylan Larkin, but if they're going to take Larkin and 3 firsts for McDavid, goodbye, Dylan. It's been real. So I think there will be somebody that ponies up for McDavid at the deadline. Either that, or you will see a massive blockbuster trade here for him even before the season starts. I'm not ruling out that possibility that somewhere they pull off the Edmonton goes to somebody and says he's not re-signing. Make us your best offer.
I've seen some reports, and maybe you guys can chime in on this as a possibility. I've seen some reports that the reason McDavid is not gung-ho to sign a long-term contract is that he's only going to sign a 1 or 2 year deal, because now that there's a new CBA in place, they expect the cap to go up in a couple years, and he's just going to sign a carryover contract basically to get him to when the cap goes up, and then he'll sign his long-term deal. Any thoughts that he might be going there as well, and just, I may as well ride it out here at Edmonton for a year and then see how it goes, and I'll just take a 1 year deal and go from there.
I mean, he very well could, right? We've seen this in other leagues across the 4 major sports in America. So it wouldn't be surprising. I was kind of surprised. I mean, before we get to free agency, we'll talk about the contract and the CBA a little bit. But yeah, I agree with what you both have said about McDavid and the problem with Edmonton overall. I do think he doesn't end up finishing his career there in Edmonton. Where that is time will tell. I think we're all in agreement it'll probably be some form of an original 6 team. There are rumors of Tampa and Philadelphia, but unless Philly really shows that they can win, it'll be an interesting conversation.
It's the Yzer plan, baby. It's the Yzer plan. Outbid him on Gibson, back him into a corner, and sign McDavid.
I really, really, and I said this to you guys, I really liken it to the whole Gretzky situation. When Gretzky was moved to LA, Gretzky did not want he didn't want to go. He wanted to stay in Edmonton, but hockey was dying in California, and Pocklington needed some cachet, basically, if you will. And they cut a deal with the NHL. Let's move Gretzky to LA, bring fans to the West Coast. I mean, he saved West Coast hockey, okay? By moving to LA, attendance went up on all the California teams now that Gretzky was there. And even though he's still on the Pacific Coast, more people were watching him than he was when he played in Edmonton. And I think if McDavid moves, he's going someplace, like you said, an original 6 team, somewhere. I honestly, I'd be shocked if he did a Gretzky and went to the West Coast. I would expect if he doesn't go to an original 6, he goes to a Florida, to a Philadelphia, to a Devils, an East Coast team where he's on prime time at the normal hour, not waiting till West Coast time where nobody's staying up to watch him.
Yep. Yeah. The other thing that has surprised me about the whole situation, and I'm not in Edmonton, obviously, so I don't know, but where's the outrage from the fans over this situation? I mean, Edmonton is just, think about the other, recent lifers in the NHL, superstar lifers. Think of, Ovechkin. Think of, Sidney Crosby. Go back into the, the previous generation, Joe Sakic, Steve Yzerman. If these guys had said, I'm not sure I want to resign, if Yzerman had said, I'm not sure I want to resign with Detroit, the fans would have been breaking down the doors of Joe Louis Arena to demand more from their management. And Edmonton seems kind of quiet, which is also, to me, not going to help, not giving McDavid a reason to stay.
That's a great point, especially in light of what Florida did. Re-signing Bennett, Marchand, and who was it?
Ekblad.
Ekblad. Re-signing all 3 of them to long-term deals, and as you said, repositioning yourself greatly for another run for a cup. And Edmonton fans, you just got beat by Florida twice. They just re-signed pieces that they need, and we still haven't re-signed McDavid, and it's radio silence up there.
Yeah, you didn't win
Yeah.
with him. You're not going to win without him.
It'll make for an interesting season ahead. And like Matt said, if some blockbuster happens beforehand, we'll be back talking about it. That's for sure. So, any final thoughts on the playoffs? We touched on a few things in passing there at the beginning. Rantanen breaking his hometown hearts of Colorado, and that's going to be a story for years and years ahead with the extension there in Dallas. I'm sure that's not the last laugh he'll have. We'll see if Colorado gets revenge in the future. Carolina continuing to get to the final and be the bridesmaid, not the bride. You have the Leafs and their playoff woes. LA losing to Edmonton now 3 straight years in the first round, unable to get over that hump. I feel like hasn't been talked enough about. Any thoughts there on any of those major storylines, or even one I didn't even mention there, Matt?
I'll touch on.
I was going to go first because I was going to give Matt the floor because I know where he's going to go. Let me go first because I know where Matt's going to tee up his favorite subject. So let me go first. Couple things that I'll take away. I agree with what Matt said earlier. I was really shocked at how easily Florida just dismantled. They made it sometimes look easy when you really look at it. Okay. I was really surprised by that. On the West side, really surprised at how easily Edmonton dispatched Dallas because I really thought that Dallas was going to go to the Cup final. Skinner found something during that series that he didn't have at any other time. If you toss that series out, his goals against and his save percentage were horrendous, okay, except for that series. So I don't know what happened there, especially after Dallas really looked good against Colorado. They were getting scoring. They were getting scoring up and down the lines. Ottinger was playing well. I just really thought that they were going to beat Edmonton and go to the Cup. You mentioned LA. I felt bad for LA drawing Edmonton yet again. But that's something we've all talked about. The NHL, we love hockey, but it is way past time to do away with this playoff format. You can't keep wiping out great teams in the first round. I mean, we knew we were going to lose Toronto and Tampa within the first 2 rounds. Okay. Both of those teams were going to be gone, or Florida. One of those, 2 of those 3 teams were going to be gone in the first 2 rounds, had no shot at making it to the final because of the way the playoffs are set up. And that's just ridiculous that you're losing the best teams that early. LA's not quite ready. They're still young. They're going to be a force. They're building a really good team. But to draw McDavid and Draisaitl in the first round again was just bad luck for them. And again, due to the playoff format. And I'll let you go now, Matt, because I know where this is going to end. But
yeah, I'll touch real quickly on a couple things. So I'm a Red Wings fan. My wife's a Stars fan. Nothing about the Avs-Stars series was bad. That was a brilliant series. The Avs losing in the first round is always great. For a Red Wings fan, it was great. For my wife as a Stars fan, it was great to see Rantanen do it to his team. Great series. As far as the Stars after that, I'll tell you exactly what happened against Edmonton. Skinner didn't find anything. The Stars just spent 5 games shooting the puck straight at his logo, and Ottinger took a dive. He disappeared. He was horrible. Which, Ottinger, Hellebuck, all right, you've done it in the regular season, time to do it in the playoffs, both of you. The Jets and the Stars need to get over the hump. I don't know what it's going to take, but the goalies have to stop taking a dive in the playoffs and get there. As far as the East goes, Carolina, defense and goaltending is the most important piece to winning a championship, but you do have to be able to score. I thought Carolina did a really good job. I know we're going to get to free agency, but considering the light free agent market this year, I think after Florida, Carolina obviously kind of comes away with the biggest prize, I think, in my mind. What was the other one? Oh, yeah, I agree with you 100% on Edmonton and LA. And it's time to move past this playoff format. It's designed to create rivalries. We've seen it, 3-4 years in a row now. And no one but Kings and Oilers fans cares about Edmonton versus LA. So it's not working. It's not creating rivalries, especially on the West Coast. I'm not even staying up until 10 o'clock, 10:30 on the East until that game starts. I didn't catch a minute of that series. So move on. Do something else. And yeah, I'm going to end teeing up on Toronto, especially this year. They lost again. They're. I mean, there's no excuse anymore, right? Like we've made every freaking excuse in the book. We're not healthy. We don't have the goalie. We're a good team. At the end of the day, the only player on that team that gets better in the playoffs is Morgan Riley. We're relying on a defenseman to carry our scoring through the playoffs. It doesn't work. Good on them for getting rid of Marner. They should have blown up the core four 2 years ago. Good job not re-signing Marner. Good job making Tavares take, basically 75% pay cut. Nylander was solid. I'll give credit where credit's due. He's been their most solid playoff performer consistently. He puts up about the exact same numbers he does in the regular season as the playoffs. Austin Matthews should be ashamed of himself once again for disappearing act as a goal scorer and doubly so for the way through his team just completely in front of the train for the whole thing. His comment about there being too many passengers was way out of line for a guy making the money he does with the expectations he does and performing at the level he is. So Austin Matthews should be ashamed of himself. Maple Leafs fans should be ashamed of him. The organization should be ashamed of him. It was a bad look all around. He's the captain now. They took the C away from Tavares. They gave it to Matthews, and there's nothing about a captain in his performance on the ice or off the ice in this playoffs. It was a bad look all around. I hope they move on from him. It doesn't look like they're going to. I wish they would. I don't know. Maybe that's your blockbuster. Maybe it's Matthews for McDavid, straight up. I don't know. But Toronto needs to move on from Austin Matthews. At the very least, they need to take a really long, hard look at whether or not he should be the captain. Because that was just inexcusable. It was a bad look for him. And I don't really have a whole lot else to say. But the Leafs are out of excuses and they're out of time.
Yeah, well said. Another year of Canada not sniffing a cup. It's another storyline, conspiracy theory, however you want to chalk it up. But maybe 2026 we'll see one of those Canadian teams get over the hump. But the way it's stacking up, not looking likely. So moving on to where we are present day, we've had the draft. Not a whole lot of movement or craziness as past years have happened. Same thing with free agency, kind of a weak overall class. A lot of guys signing extensions. Carolina getting the biggest prize there, arguably, in Nikolai Ehlers. And so maybe we can touch on our individual teams here, our thoughts on how the draft went. And then we can hit on some of the major moves there across the league. So, Matt, with Detroit, it's been a few years now with the Yzer plan. Are you hungry for results at this point? Are you, as a fan, thinking Yzerman's got to do something to show that he's still the GM that he was when he was in Tampa? Or are you still patient and trusting that he knows what he's doing when it comes to building a team, and the team just needs to perform better this year on the ice in a very tough, competitive Atlantic division?
I still think Yzerman knows what he's doing. They've got a lot of pieces in place. They're building mostly from the ground up. Raymond, Seider, Edvinson joined the team this year. Casper joined the team this year. Looked good. Getting Gibson was a big piece. I don't love him on his own, but I think the 1A, 1B of Gibson and Talbot is a lot better in goal than anything they've had in the previous years. And I think that's a tandem that can split a workload. I don't think they're ready to contend for a cup yet. I like what I see from the team on the ice. The past 2 years, there have been, that kind of never say die, never give up spirit. Um, they're in a tough division, and both of the past 2 years, they've had some midseason slumps that have really, really killed them. Some long losing streaks that set them behind, and they just couldn't make up enough ground. Obviously, the Gibson getting the best goalie out there, I think, was a good move. You gave up some picks for him. All right. And Mrazek, okay. We're not missing anything there. I thought they did well in their draft, considering it wasn't a really deep class. And the Flyers, once again, got the guy I would have liked to have seen fall to Detroit. But I think Carter Bear is a really good pick for where he's at. I think he projects out as a solid middle six winger, a second line guy, which is pretty good for this class. It wasn't a deep draft class either. Probably not a lot of top talent in this draft unless there's some diamonds in the rough somewhere. So I think Detroit has had a pretty good offseason. They re-signed Patrick Kane at less money than he was making this year, so that's a win for him. He's, his experience and leadership is huge. Again, like Marchand in Florida, I think if you've got Patrick Kane on your third line, you're doing something right. And I think that, moving on from Tarasenko was a good move. It frees up roster spots for some of the younger guys. And it's just a matter of patience. I keep coming back to the fact that Tampa's best years, Yzerman built the team, but the Stanley Cups came after he left, right? Is Yzerman going to be in Detroit when they win their next cup? I don't know, but I still am confident that he's laying the groundwork for it. And it's just a matter of time. And again, in a really competitive division, they're going to have to avoid those long losing streaks. They're going to have to find a way to win in that grinded out middle part of the year.
Dad, your thoughts on the Flyers?
Oh, I'm loving what Danny Briere is doing. I am so glad that they made him the GM. They took a little longer than they should have to go that route, but I love what he's doing in Philadelphia. He's not in a hurry. He's biding his time. And, we talked about it last year. Michkov falling in their laps, scratch your head, we beat it to death last year. You're going to take a Russian player, but you're not going to take Michkov, right? I mean, there's just no logical sense to how that happened. But he fell to them, great. The trade for Zegras with Anaheim, I thought opened the door. I knew that's where they were going to go with the draft once they made that move. I love the first pick of Martin. He's a big, bruising, power type forward that just fits in well with Philadelphia. He's the kind of player the Flyers love. I think he's going to do well in Philadelphia. And he's the kind of guy that's out there. He's not going to let you push Michkov around. He's going to be out there, you want to push our guy around? Well, you're going to have to go through me kind of attitude. So I knew they were going there, or at least I hope they were going there once they made the trade. Then they went center. So I like that. And then they went defense. And then they had, 9 other picks. So gosh only knows what those guys are going to do. Okay. But you have pieces now. You're building pieces. I'm still not a fan of their goalies. Okay. We need to work. I don't expect the Flyers to make the playoffs this year. I'd be stunned if they did. I know they gave a quick, they gave a snippet of a run there last year, but they were never going to make it. They just don't have enough horses yet. But to Matt's point, I love the fact that they're competitive every game. You get those loser games from every team, throughout the season. But night in and night out, you don't play the Flyers expecting an easy win. You're going to have to work if you want to come away with the 2 points against the Flyers, which is all I want at this point. I just want them to continue that trend, to be competitive, to not just throw in the towel and keep working to get better. And I think Danny Briere is going to keep moving pieces. We've seen him do it. Nobody thought he'd move Carter Gauthier, and look, Gautier didn't want to play in Philadelphia, so Danny said, okay, fine, we'll get you out of here. So I like Briere's attitude. I like what he's doing, and I think there's hope in Philadelphia. Not for playoffs yet, but I think we're going in the right direction. So I'm very happy. And now the Devils.
Yeah, I think New Jersey just needs to have a healthy season. That's been their Achilles heel the past few years. I think when you're losing your star player for a significant part of the season, it's going to be tough. And of course, he got hurt right before the playoffs, so that sunk any hope that I had on any sort of run this year, even without Dougie at the start of the year. Siegenthaler out most of the year. So I think they have still a strong core. I mean, they've traded away most of their draft capital the past few years to bring in assets like Meyer, like Markstrom, which I think have been good additions. You expect more out of Timo Meyer. But I think the coaching change to Sheldon Keefe helped a little bit there. Hopefully he can continue to become that 30 plus 40 goal scorer that we signed him to be. So I think it's just staying healthy, having a little bit more of a bounce back year from people like Dawson Mercer will help. Expectations were higher for him. And I like some of the minor signings that they did to bring in some veteran depth, some guys who have been to the playoffs before and can help fill out that bottom six. It'll be interesting for me to see how they develop and utilize their defensive core. I feel like they have a logjam there, especially down the right side, with Dougie, Pesci, Simone Nemec, and they signed Kovacevic to a 5-year deal as well. So you got 5 righties right there. One of them's got to move in some capacity. So, I mean, I think Simone Nemec has played well. I think he deserves a shot to be an everyday NHLer, but it's hard to move on from those other guys as well. So I think them just staying healthy will be key. They should be another good playoff team. And then it's about finding success in the playoffs and taking it to the next level. The big question mark outside of health and Jack Hughes and his development as an NHL player is his brother Luke and what kind of contract extension he's going to be looking at. I think that's the big piece. They talked about it before the offseason that is kind of the crux to how this organization is going to go in the future. I do think he's a very valuable asset. I think he might not be the offensive defenseman that his brother Quinn is, and he's a very good in his own end and has grown. But I think he brings a more complete game than Quinn does and is definitely a future top liner of the future. See him as more of a offensive threat than Aaron Ekblad, but still can play the same shutdown defensive style that he did throughout these past few playoffs as he continues to grow into his game. So we'll see what the future holds, but yeah, really just this team staying healthy throughout the year and competing for the top spot in the division with Carolina. I expect them to be up there throughout the year.
Well, I'll add a little ribbon to this and tie it up with what we talked about at the very beginning. You know, when Hughes went down, he sure really stepped up his game. Okay. But it's the regular season. And then, you know, I mean, he did everything he could. He sure did everything he could. He was scoring or assisting on almost every goal that the Devils were getting in that regular season. And then the playoffs came and no Jack Hughes, and everybody just said, we're going to shut down Hischier, and the Devils got nothing. You know,
yeah, if it wasn't Hischier and Bratt, that first line, nobody was scoring. And yeah, I mean, that's the problem, right? When you lose your superstar center, right. Hischier has to play up a line. Everybody's bumped up one more. So it makes it a huge challenge, right? It's an uphill battle from the start against Carolina. And then without Jack, they were in trouble. So, yeah, Hischier is a complete. I love him as the captain. He's a complete two-way forward, one of the best in the NHL. Definitely should have a Selke in his future. But yeah, they just need to stay healthy and play a little bit more cohesively defensively. A lot of mistakes on the back end there, lazy turnovers like we saw with Edmonton. So, tying together some final thoughts on free agency. You have Jonathan Toews coming back into the ring over to Winnipeg, his hometown, with kind of a veteran discount there. We'll see how much of an impact he has. Nikolai Ehlers joining Carolina. We touched on that on the way through. And Vegas, once again, getting the shiniest penny of them all. However you like Marner in the playoffs, he is a proven generational playmaker in this league, guaranteed for 70-plus assists. Going to be in that 100-point conversation, especially playing alongside Jack Eichel and the rest of the crew there in Vegas. So any other thoughts on this free agency or draft as a whole, gentlemen?
Go ahead, Matt. You can go first.
I love Marner to Vegas. I think it's just a great fit. It gives him an opportunity to immediately succeed, and now's where we're going to see if the problem is the players or the problem is the culture in Toronto. Right? He's got his chance to sort of prove that there were deeper issues there, and that he's a legitimate superstar of the highest order. Especially because the other guys there have done it. Right? We talked about it with Eichel for years. Is he that guy? And then they won the cup and went, yep, he's that guy. He can do it. Marner's got the same chance now. So kudos to him. I love Marner to Vegas. Vegas is a super entertaining team. Always have been. I think it's a great fit for Marner. It's a great fit for hockey. Love Carolina signing Ehlers because they need the score. I love Jonathan Toews coming back just because you never like to see a guy forced out for health reasons. So I'm thrilled that he's well enough to play again, much like, as much as I hate the Avalanche, was thrilled to see Landeskog take the ice again in the playoffs. Great players. Glad to see him back. I don't know if the Toews signing makes Winnipeg better necessarily. It doesn't make them worse, but they're a pretty complete team already that just hasn't quite found the way to get over the hump in the playoffs. So I don't know that Toews is the piece that does that for you. Maybe the leadership and the experience part for sure. That Stanley Cup pedigree is going to be a very valuable piece in Winnipeg. I think on the ice, if you get a 30-point season from the guy, you've got your money's worth, and we'll see if that makes a difference. But really, just glad to see him back. To be honest, glad to see him finding a home in the NHL and maybe get another year or two playing under his belt.
The only thing that I'll add to that is that I agree with just about everything that Matt has said. I think Marner is a great fit in Vegas. It's basically the same situation he had in Toronto. Eichel as a center is a shoot first center. He's not a passing center. And Marner on the wing is a pass first wing. He doesn't shoot as much as I wish he would. I think Marner would score a heck of a lot more if he'd shoot more. So I think those two complement each other exceptionally well. So to your point, Matt, we'll see now, if he can, Vegas is going to make the playoffs. So then it's just what happens from there. Carolina definitely improved their scoring. What does Carolina need to do to get over the hump? Obviously, they unlike Dallas, they don't feel the problem is Brind'Amour because they stick with Brind'Amour year after year after year, and Dallas, but goodbye. Yeah.
So it's a what have you done for me lately league. It's probably not the board's fault, but you can't fire the players.
Right. But Carolina sticks with Brind'Amour. Mm-hmm. So go figure. Toronto has tried everything, right? Except the players, right? It's the GM's fault. It's the coach's fault. Not looking at the players. Well, maybe they're finally starting to look at the players in Toronto, So I think that, and the Toews thing, I don't think it adds a whole lot offensively to Winnipeg, but I do think come playoff time, you have a proven Stanley Cup winner who knows the grind it takes, who knows that you need everybody competing for that cup, not just your top line. You had Toews and Kane, obviously, okay, but Chicago didn't win all those cups just because Toews and Kane were there. They got scoring, when they needed it from those third and fourth lines. And I think that's something that until you're there and you have somebody like that. I mean, let's look at Pittsburgh. Crosby's still a good player. Ovechkin's still a good goal scorer, but they are not the players they were 10 years ago, okay? But you want that leadership in the playoffs. You want those guys to be able to lead the younger guys and say, when the younger guys are faltering, you want that guy in there to say, this is not the time to falter. This is the time where you got to suck it up. You got to push through it. And he's got the pedigree to it's not like some guy who's never won a cup telling you what to do. This is a guy who's been there, done that. So that's where I think he may make a difference. And we'll find out, right? We'll find out. To Matt's earlier point, both Ottinger and Hellebuck need to just, put up or shut up come playoff time, because they've both had great regular seasons, but the last few playoffs have been just terrible for them.
Yeah. Yeah, some teams need some changes. Other teams are trying to find that missing piece to get them to the next level, whether it's into the playoffs or further in the playoffs or finally bringing home that cup. So it's always what makes the offseason fun. Reflecting on some guys who've had some pretty good careers, we had the Hall of Fame class come out. I don't have much to offer on this since these guys were all past my days of watching hockey, but I'm sure both of you do have some comments here. So, Matt, we can start with you. Any thoughts there on the Hall of Fame class for this year?
Alexander McGillney, it is about time. Guy was phenomenal. He got overshadowed for a lot of his career because he was either on a bad team or he's on the opposite of the ice of a guy named Pavel Bure. And he doesn't get the credit he deserves, but he's 1,000-point club in under 1,000 games. He's better than a point per game player for his career. The guy was just a tremendous offensive talent. I also believe, we've talked about before, Hall of Fames are supposed to tell the story of the sport. This guy was the first Soviet player to defect for the purposes of playing in the NHL. He set a trend that he paved the way for the other Russian players. As a Red Wings fan who grew up in the 90s, thank you for that, Alexander McGillney, because obviously, Detroit capitalized on that Russian influx of players as well. McGillney just, I can't say enough about how deserving it is and how long overdue it is. Not to take away from anyone else in the class. I think it's a great class. I think it's a much more deserving class than some of the others we've seen recently. But my shout out on this one is to Alexander McGillney. It's overdue. He's finally getting the recognition he deserves. And hopefully Keith Tkachuk is next.
So I will just add, as somebody who saw all of these players play the vast majority of their career, I agree with you, Matt. McGillney's way overdue. Okay, if for nothing else, we talk about it all the time. Players who change the sport. Okay, they deserve some type of recognition. And McGillney, the first Russian player, he opened the door for all the other Russian players. Okay. That alone warrants a spot in the Hall of Fame. Had he done nothing in his career, the fact that he was the first, you put him in the Hall of Fame and say, this is the guy that opened the door for boom, 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 boom.
Yes,
right?
Especially when you consider the way the Cold War impacted hockey so much more than other sports.
Right. So you have that. Joe Thornton, what can you say?
No brainer.
Just a classy guy who had not only a long career, because we talk about this all the time. A long career doesn't necessarily make you a Hall of Famer. Okay. But he toiled away all those years, for San Jose, trying desperately to get San Jose a cup, before he decided to move on. He could have moved on earlier in his career, and he didn't. So kudos to Joe Thornton, just a classy guy, and a solid, definite Hall of Fame performer. Duncan Keith, again, Cup winner, Norris Trophy winner. He deserves to be there. Now you get to Zdeno Chara, and I'm a little different on Chara because I saw him play. Chara, we used to call him. I know the Rangers fans started it, and the Flyers fans picked it up. But his nickname in the Rangers was Tripod, because if he took his stick off the ice, he'd fall over. Okay, he got better as his career went on, but his size was a hindrance early in his career. Guys would just skate right around him. He'd use his reach to, but he couldn't skate for crap. Just could not skate a lick. So if you came with speed, like if he had to defend against McKinnon or McDavid, you may as well just, send them straight on in, because he ain't going to stop him. He just couldn't skate a lick early in his career, and he got much better as his career went on. So, I think he's deserving. But if you were going to make a case that somebody may not have been, it would be him, just because early in his career he was just such a disaster. And nobody talks about it because the end of his career, he got the cup in Boston. He was the captain in Boston for a long time. And he, like I said, he did improve as his career went on. But man, early in his career, he was defensive liability back there. He really was. I think the only reason he stayed out there was because of his reach. He had such a long reach that he would use that effectively to help offset his very poor skating. So that's my take on the Hall of Fame class. Nick, your thoughts?
Yeah, like I said, I didn't really have much to add here. I think you guys hit everything pretty well going through. Excited to see who's coming next year. And hopefully we'll be hitting that Hall of Fame road trip pretty soon in the coming years. Before we close, I did want to tie back into our last talk when we did at the start of the year, when we drafted our positional units, and kind of just present some of those stats here for everybody. So we got it all captured outside of our text group chat. So, and I did a lot of work to pull all these numbers together, so I'm going to share it. We drafted top 6, bottom 6 defensemen and goalies. Again, just looking at going by points and time on ice to sort by who we're adding up for all of this. So Tampa finished first overall, followed by Toronto second overall. That was me and Matt, respectively, in the top 6. And Dad drafted Edmonton, actually finished 10th. So it just goes to show, even if you have the top 2 forwards in the league, the other 4, if they're not putting up their weight, they're not going to have you up there. So thought that was interesting. Seattle finishing last there. But as I pointed, we moved to the bottom 6. They were last in the top 6, but they were number 1 in the bottom 6 for points. I didn't have everybody else in there, but the Kings, Dad took them. So you won that. Would they finish 6th? Right behind them was Dallas with Matt again. And then I had Minnesota all the way down there in 21. Tampa finishing last in the bottom 6. Kind of makes sense with them in the top. For top 6, move on to defensemen. You had Colorado there at number 2. Vancouver with at number 9, and then New Jersey definitely hurting from that Dougie Hamilton injury, dropped down to number 18. Washington finished number 1 there, and San Jose, surprise, surprise, last place for defensive points. And then goalies, no shock, Winnipeg, the top save percentage goaltending duo there with Hellebuck with another incredible season. Florida finished number 7. That's who I had. The Rangers at 16 with Dad. And then Boston dropped out big time this year with number 28 overall. And then Philly finishing last place. So Philly's looking to get back in the playoffs. They've got their own goaltending issues to solve for next year. So just wanted to highlight those stats and kind of what we did. before the season starts again this year. We'll be sure to go through that, maybe some lessons learned across the board for the three of us on how to draft that. And we'll see who comes out on top as the champion next year when we revisit this a year from now.
So tell everybody who the champion was. You went.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say the overall champion for that would have been me with
Right.
I finished, it went me, Matt, Ed, Dad, top 6, Dad, Matt, me for bottom 6, me, Dad, Matt for defense, and me, Dad, Matt for goalies.
You're a
So
Swayman.
Swayman not playing well, and the Dougie Hamilton injury definitely hurt your chances there. And the bottom 6 were a difference of 6 points total between you and Dad for that placement. So splitting hairs there towards the end, but that'll be another fun part of next year or the beginning of the season podcast when we come back before that. So as we begin to wrap things up here, any other final thoughts on this offseason, the playoffs, how things have sorted up, things you're looking forward to for next year? Matt, I know you've already got your Leafs rant in there, but maybe there's a second tier to this. If not, if there's anything else, go ahead and take the floor.
No second Leafs rant. One really quick one. We wouldn't be a season recap of this year without saying congratulations to Alex Ovechkin. He broke the all-time scoring record. Awesome accomplishment. We thought the record would never fall. It did. Tremendous player for a tremendous amount of time. For sure, first ballot Hall of Famer, obviously, one of the all-time greats. So well done. It was a great goal. It was a beautiful ceremony. So congratulations to Ovi. And then one other guy I want to give a shout out to, because it probably gets overshadowed in the playoffs, and that's Mark Scheifele. For those of you who are following the story, he played that last game of that series against Dallas the day after losing his dad. I can't imagine what that's like. Our dad's here with us on this podcast. We love sitting here talking about hockey. Losing him would leave an irreplaceable hole in my life and yours, Nick. I can't imagine what Mark Scheifele was going through. I also know that being a former athlete and taking the penalty where you're in the box where the game-winning goal is scored against you in that situation. I can't imagine what he's feeling like. I know what it feels like to miss the buzzer-beating shot in basketball and to strike out last in baseball under normal circumstances. I cannot imagine what Scheifele was feeling in that moment. But I just want to give him a shout-out. He played with a tremendous amount of heart in that situation. He scored the only goal for Winnipeg in that game. I don't think he has anything to hang his head about. He's a tremendous player. He showed a tremendous amount of grit and heart and toughness in that game. Mark, I'm sure you're not going to hear this, but if on some event you do, hats off to you, man. That was awesome. I'm sure your dad would be proud of you. Got nothing to hang your head about on that one. That was great. So just want to shout out Mark Scheifele there.
Well said, Matt, on both points. I'll just add on the Scheifele. I know we talked about it for those watching the podcast. If you didn't see it, or maybe you did see it, whatever. We talked about it. Scheifele really has no choice. Guy's going in on a breakaway. He either has to let the guy go, and if he scores, everybody's going to yell at him, why didn't you trip the guy? Why didn't you grab him? Why didn't you do something? Okay. And when he stuck out his stick, it was an obvious trip. I mean, it's the refs, I thought, called a great game that game. They basically swallowed the whistle, weren't calling really much of anything unless it was really blatant. And the players respected that. The players were playing well. They were playing hockey. They weren't out to cheap shot anybody. And Scheifele basically did what he had to do. And, the referees got together and talked about it. They didn't even they blew the whistle, but then the discussion was is he going in the box or is he getting a penalty shot? Because they could have gone either way. It was 50-50. Mm-hmm. And I think they made you have to give the referees credit because they get bad mouthed and maligned a lot. They got together, they talked about it, they discussed it. It wasn't a quick discussion, it was a long discussion for penalty review type stuff. And then they decided they were going to give him the penalty and not give the penalty shot. They were going to give Winnipeg the chance to kill that off rather than give a penalty shot and lose the game on a penalty shot, which I think was the absolute correct decision to make. And it's just bad luck, as you said, Matt, that it's Scheifele that was in that position to have to do that. So yeah, I felt so bad for him when it happened, but he really was in no man's land, either way. The only other thing that I'll add is that this is we talked a little bit about it. It's a weak free agent class. I think that the shiny pieces are all gone. There's not a whole lot out there left. And I think the only thing left really is to scratch our heads and wonder what's going to happen with McDavid throughout this season. I think that is the huge question mark hanging over the entire NHL. And to something, I don't know whether it was Matt or Nick who said it earlier, it would not shock me in the least to have a Matthews McDavid and a couple other pieces here and there thrown in and ship Matthews out to Edmonton where nobody's going to watch him play anymore and he can cry all he wants, and bring McDavid to Toronto and Toronto all in to go for the cup, right? And now everybody sees McDavid because he's on the Eastern time zone. That would not shock me at all. I would not be shocked by that move in the least, because Toronto has to blow it up. They've done the whole GM coaching thing. The only thing they haven't done is blow up the players. And I think it's time. I think they need to really, really do that.
Yeah, great points all the way through. The only thing I'll add is I'm just waiting for them to add a trophy for the best defensive defenseman. Let's give the Norris to the best offensive defenseman. We have a Selke for the best defensive forward. It's time we get one to recognize what the guys are doing back there on the defensive end and shutting down teams. The Jakob Slavins, the Gustav Forslings, the guys that really make a difference, especially come playoff time. Those guys need to be recognized and have an award for them. So
I think the Norris should still go to the best defenseman. I think what you do is you create the Bobby Orr
trophy
for the best offensive defenseman. Because there was nobody, I mean, you guys never got to see Bobby Orr play. I mean, he had 2 horrific knees that ended his career. But boy, could that guy score.
Yeah. Great points. Well, if this ever finds its way across Bettman's desk, we'll say we had some influence over it. But I think that'll wrap up today's episode on the recap of the NHL season. Congrats again to the Florida Panthers. We look forward in a couple months, once the dust settles from free agency and rosters are all about set. We'll take a deep dive into some of our predictions for certain teams, certain players, certain accolades, and have our draft again to see who's going to come out on top this year. So thank you both again. Always enjoy doing this, and we will see you all next time.